There wouldn't have been a lot of beer drunk when the first fair-paying upper-class settlers arrived in Canterbury.
Many of the English gentry that came here were remittance men, misbehaving black sheep sent to the colonies to be taught a lesson. But others came for the challenge and the potential of a new land. What was the lure of this rugged, unproven colony to a member of the gentry?
Coming from one of the wealthiest families in England, in 1855, the first Ackland headed into the Canterbury wilderness to set up a better Britain.
You read their diaries and you see where they didn't like to have to go down to the village square where the labouring people had to doff their cap to them. And they were, you know, the family have always been very liberal and they just wanted to start a more egalitarian society and come out here.
The grass is long, forgotten dreams. The prickles in my feet.
It's the same as it was in England. And if you ever go back to Killerton, which is about 12 miles out of Exeter, you'll find that the homestead's in that position and the rhododendrons and everything's...
So they brought a little bit of home with them,
yes,
as it were.
Did. In here, the vicar was going to live up the hill and this was going to be like England with a lot of smaller farms around and they'd all come to church on Sundays and so on.
Right.
But I said when that big snow came in 95, they lost 19,000 sheep out of 45,000 sheep. And he went broke. He was broke.
So you're saying that the dream was actually of more of a community than it turned out to be. And in fact, that really changed over that snowstorm.
Yep.
As well as importing the English landscape, these early Canterbury settlers introduced the Church of England to our most English city with its attendant Anglican attitudes to education. The first schools set up were modelled on the upper-class institutions of home.
I vow to be my country. But what country are we talking about here? For most of these boys, it's New Zealand, but 50 years ago, it would have been England. I was on my high school debating team, and one of the sweetest victories we ever had was right here at Christ College. Our conception was that everybody, they were all plooty, stuffy. We used to call them blackballs in those days, people that came here. And for no reason that I could actually discern, I never knew anybody from here.
No.
You know.
We get lots of people who come in here for open days and visits and they tell me they've never been through the front gate despite living in Christchurch for 50 years. And they just think it's a very closed sort of community. Of course it's not. This school came out here probably when the English class system was at its height. Certainly in the early 1900s, the Edwardian era was the greatest era of social division in the UK.
Everything they read here was English. There's Robert Louis Stevenson, Charles Dickens, Shakespeare, Milton, Pope, Tennyson. It was as if they were trying to reinforce the idea of home and culture being England or English.
All those manners we were taught as kids with the knife and the fork and the how to eat, and that's all British, and we knew that came from Britain.
Determination and toughness in many ways. I mean, our sort of hard-mindedness. I think all of those are traits of the English.
We got a sort of tolerance towards other people so long as they accepted the superiority of English values.
A lot of New Zealand schools still use these same values. They look like England, but they're not actually England. And the interesting thing is that this English public school education system was translated down here and manages to reach into society across the board. Mind you, not many schools have the village green in the middle of them.
This is another English upper-class ideal.
We play rugby, we play soccer,
Right.
And we have cross-country running, harriers as we call it. In the summer, cricket, of course.
So why were we so obsessed with sport in the colonies? Both we and the Australians base a large part of our national character on the sports we play. And we're not interested in gridiron or baseball, and we don't do gymnastics very well or petanque. No, no, no. We do Commonwealth sports. Rugby, cricket, netball, bowls.
It's one of the big things that English and British migrants generally brought was sports. Bishop Selwyn, the first Anglican bishop in New Zealand, was in the first Oxford-Cambridge boat race, before he came to New Zealand.
A lot of the things that we think as being central to New Zealand identity, being good at war, hunting, were values and experiences which actually in England were part of the English upper class. And what happens in New Zealand is that those values come to New Zealand and then get universalised.
Farming is a physically tough job, and people were training for rugby, if you like, every day. Huge issue, particularly when you went back and played teams like England, where people were drawn from public schools and universities, and while they might have been big, had big physical bodies, were nothing like as tough as you needed to be successful in international rugby. For New Zealand, it was an opportunity, that's back to the sort of big brother, little brother syndrome, to show that we might have gone away, we might have gone 12,000 miles away, and it might be 100 years since, but we'd figured out how to play the game, and we were coming back to show our teachers how to do it.